Just gay stuff. Man, that sounds so loud because it's so early in the morning.
It's very early.
Guys, we got up super early to do a really cool interview.
We did.
It's currently 3:47 a.m. in the morning.
That's disgusting.
I feel so wired.
Why tired?
You know how we release our episodes that's like 6 a.m. for your listening pleasure on the way to work? If this one was coming out in real time, it'd be like, any nurses in the crew?
Literally.
Anyone on the way to work?
Or coming home from work.
Coming home, yeah, all the shift workers. This one's for you, baby. I feel like we need to remember that we don't have to be quiet.
That's true.
I think I'm just getting my like sleep voice.
We're getting it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did this intro a bit before so that we're hyped. We're like ready to go.
We're ready to go for our guests. We've got our coffee. It's all right.
Yeah. And we're super, super excited to intro our guest today.
Yeah.
What a staple for queer viewing in early television.
Literally. It's going to be so good. Welcome to another episode of Just Gay Stuff podcast. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Jess. And today we have the absolute pleasure of introducing another amazing guest. He is a writer, a director, and more recently an actor in his own short films. You might know him from his appearances on seasons 2 and 3 from The Real L Word, but today we have the absolute pleasure of introducing to you Kacy.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. It's so weird. I get so embarrassed when someone says actor.
I know. I was reading on your Instagram how that was such a big deal for you to star in your own short film.
Really?
It really was. I was just like, because, so many people with he, him pronouns are like actor, director, starring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to come off with like that egotistical vibe,
yes.
right?
Especially because I'm a white man in his mid-40s and it's just like, okay. Suddenly he got a divorce and now he's just off doing these things.
But then you have to do these things to fulfill you. You have to, reach for the stars.
Yes.
That's what we're doing, I guess.
The ultimate testament to like what COVID brought me was myself, right?
Yeah.
I went into lockdown alone for the first time ever in my whole life. I lived alone. And I was like, well, if this is it and we're all going to die, who am I going to be?
Yeah.
Am I going to be what everybody else has always expected me to be, or am I going to be myself? And this is weird, eccentric guy who spends all of his time and energy and money trying to live out this dream of telling stories. That's who I am. So
I love that. I think, obviously we spoke a little bit before hitting record and we started this conversation, but Jess and I have this saying that through the power of storytelling, we can hopefully educate others, especially around the rainbow community, and provide that sense of acceptance throughout the community and outside of the community, essentially.
Yeah. Somebody came up with the term the alphabet people. And
the alphabet mafia or something. Yeah.
And, I was born in 1979, a dreary October day in 1979. And growing up, I was really raised on like white and black gay male storytellers talking about surviving AIDS and HIV.
Yeah.
That was the culture in which I learned about a community that I knew intrinsically that I belonged to, but it took me a while to sort out which of the alphabet letters I was.
Yeah.
Well, take us back to the beginning of that story. Let's go all the way back there.
Yeah.
All the way back there. So the jury day in 1979 when I came upon Earth.
Yep.
So,
What time were you born? Come on.
Bless the earth with your presence.
Oh, I can give you my whole chart because
Fellow Libra baby.
Actually Scorpio.
Oh.
October 30th.
On the cusp.
And 22nd.
Well, so I don't believe in cusps.
Oh, okay.
So this is super controversial already. Yeah, very much a Scorpio. And I know this because my mom is a Libra.
Okay.
Was you continue to be a Libra, I think, after you pass on.
Yeah, your soul continues.
After her soul continues to be a Libra.
Yeah.
So I was born at 4:45 p.m. in West Covina, which makes me a Scorpio sun, a Pisces moon, and a Taurus rising.
Oh. That's a lot of stubborn.
That's a lot of energy.
A lot of fixed. Well, wait, because I have a stellium in Scorpio in my 7th house,
Wow.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
My Venus is in Scorpio, as so is my Uranus.
Oh, wow.
Anybody who's like follows astrology at all, just like turn off the thing.
Lauren gave me side eyes. I'm not sure if you saw that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's okay. That's fine.
Throw me under the bus here.
I was raised primarily in an Irish, Italian, Catholic family in a small town called Diamond Bar, which is, I call it the Bermuda Triangle because Diamond Bar is a microcosm of diversity. It is a lot of converging communities of like first, second generation Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Indian communities, as well as a smattering of like white people.
Yeah, wow. Really multicultural.
Very diverse, like racially diverse. However, it's a valley. And on one side is a gated community called the country, like ultra rich people. And then on this side, working class,
Yeah.
Okay.
really, really working class. And I was on this side of the hill. I call it off-white collar.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because it's like they were still considered white collar jobs. So people were like accountants or banker or teacher or something like that. But it's by no means like sophisticated, crisp corporate. Like the difference between blue collar and white collar in the 70s in the United States was like a really big difference of if you went to work dirty or you went to work clean. Once you got to the 80s, like if you went to work, you were working class.
Yeah, right.
If you were on a yacht, you are not working class. Just think of Donald Trump. He is a quintessential white collar person who like wears a white collar and doesn't do anything.
Yeah, well, that's very true.
But it took a really long time for me to realize all of these things because this is so from a cultural standpoint. And I have 2 degrees in film theory, which means it's like, critical theory, queer theory, gender studies, critical race theory, and literary criticism, and psychoanalysis. Like that is what film theory is. So I can just go off on these pretty big tangents about culture.
Go for it. We're here for it.
Okay. So the 1980s is when we hit postmodernism, right? And postmodernism has lots of different facets, but fundamentally, postmodernism's job and how it operates culturally is that it builds layers of meaning on top of things that have already existed. And over time, you can lose the original reference for something. So if you think about the concept of Bruce Springsteen, he's a working blue collar model of a guy in blue jeans who's got a guitar and he's got gruffle, he's got a voice, and like that is the image of a hardworking American. However, nobody, like so few people look like that.
Yeah.
Or have jobs like that. And we've automated ourselves, specifically in the 80s, those jobs went to Japan, they went to, South Korea, they went to Taiwan, and so an entire layer of American manufacturing just went away. But we had this image of these sort of like American working men. So we've lost this thread of like who we are, and we only had it represented back to us through the movies we saw and the music that we heard. And then this cool thing called music videos, which came out in 1980 because of MTV. So my whole generation was one that was handed deep-seated inconsistencies, and we're only given stories to hold them up. That's it.
Yeah.
So like to be an American was to be anti-communist. We were in a Cold War with Russia. right? The way to beat Russia was through weapons and guns and bodybuilding, and you could box your way out of it. You could change people's minds. I'm talking about Rocky IV. And also that people were supposed to be straight and men and women together only, and marriage forever, despite the fact that the Inquirer and all the tabloids were very big on divorces and who's sleeping with who, and every TV show was like Dallas and Dynasty where people were having affairs constantly, and it was just like an onslaught of you're supposed to be this Christian model of purity and perfection and heteronormativity, but then everything else I'm going to show you is going to be sex, drugs, rock and roll, cheating, porn in terms of like magazines and rock and roll, and like figure it out.
Yeah. Like, where do you fit in between all of that?
Right. And also do not in any way question what it is that you're seeing or why this feels uncomfortable. And also there was no supervision whatsoever. There was nobody sitting down and talking us through any of this. Also, parents had a child. I called us the set it and forget it generation. There's this concept of soup starter. I don't know if you have this in Australia, but soup starter is like this, it's like a cylinder of dried chicken parts and like freeze-dried vegetables. It looks like astronaut food.
Oh, like a stock for soup, essentially.
Stock, but like chunks of freeze-dried like peas and carrots.
Okay.
Kind of like cuppa soup.
Yeah, you would take this soup starter and put it in water and put it in a crock pot for 8 hours. And when you get home from work, you'd have a delicious dinner for your family. So they had us. They added water and they were like, I did it. I added it.
Yeah.
Everything else was just like, we were just expected to take care of ourselves and figure it out ourselves. No instructions, no internet. If you had a book report due and you went to the library and someone had already, and you had it on snakes and somebody had already checked out the S from the encyclopedia, you had to choose a different animal.
Yeah.
There was no Google. There was no, we had no information. So we didn't even know what we didn't know. And so how that huge conglomeration of bullshit that I've just described to you makes a kid is that you had every single terrifying atrocity. You had a Cold War, an imminent threat of nuclear disaster constantly. In Los Angeles, you had multiple earthquakes. You had race riots like Rodney King and O.J. Simpson. You had a constant stream of celebrity deaths and and also the pressure of like dieting and culture and body and also that people move here to live out their wildest dreams. So if you already live here, you should have an advantage, even though you have no idea how to take that you're doing something wrong if you're not already an 8-year-old and a director or an 8-year-old on TV.
Yeah.
And then when you find yourself under the immense amount of pressure that the Catholic Church presses down upon every single person it infects, you have this guilt shame spiral of like, I am an abomination and wrong. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. I seem to be okay. I do my homework. I get good grades. I'm nice to my parents, even though they ignore me. But everything I do or say is wrong, no matter what it is. And I feel bad all the time. And I have no one to tell and no one to talk to. So then you go to MTV and you see Prince and you're like, this being exists in this, like, I know that he identified as male, but there's a lot of gender fluidity.
Yeah, I was going to say that, very much so.
Ditto David Bowie, ditto Cyndi Lauper, ditto Madonna. I mean, these were the angels that were sent to us via MTV. And then HBO was the first time you could ever watch movies on TV in a way that was like straightforward. So nothing was edited out. And also there was no commercials. And so with the introduction of cable TV at the same time that gave us MTV and HBO, you suddenly had this stream of stories constantly on where you had no parents, you had no supervision, you had no real kind of like information, right? Tangible information of like, I can go to the internet and Google, am I gay? And or like, how do I know I'm trans? And you can get 8 million examples of that now.
Yeah.
In 1984, you could not do any of that.
It didn't exist.
Yeah.
You went to movies. And then when you had HBO or MTV, you could watch those on repeat. They were the only things that repeated. Or you could get like a VHS tape, but even VHS tapes, like someone had to drive you there, someone had to give you money for that. This influx of cable television was the difference between my generation and someone in Gen X, like full Gen X. 'Cause I'm a Xennial. Is that
Okay, yeah, you're on that cusp.
I'm speaking of, it's the only cusp I believe in.
Yeah. I keep saying that word.
That was the difference between them and us, is that they had music, like records and the radio. Like, just think of like, when people say boomer or Gen X, they still had a very like analog version of tangibility. Whereas everything that we had was just like, it was just streaming into our living rooms via cable. So constant news, constant trauma.
Yeah.
And then HBO, constant movies, unedited, in a way that we saw sex and violence and drama and like just lots of really great content, but unedited, adult. And then MTV, which was a bricolage of postmodernism flying all over the place.
Yeah.
Which was amazing, but also just like, that's a lot for a 0 to 6-year-old to take in.
Yeah.
That's how I got here today. That was a very long way. That's like a 45-minute interview. Sorry.
No,
that's
that's
okay.
absolutely
We
what
love
we're
it.
after. We want that like full backstory from you of like how it all came together for you.
It's no wonder that every single person I know who was born between the years 1977 and 1980, all of us have extreme amounts of ADHD, but there's like a lid on that pot. That's OCD. Because we didn't have the luxury of like getting up out of our seats. We were beaten. Like, we were literally, like, I had teachers in 2nd grade who were like, would throw kids against walls because they were being disobedient, and that was fine.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
big
the same
deal.
thing happened out here. We hear stories about like rulers being
Rulers,
smacked against kids' knuckles and the duster being thrown at heads and things like that. And it's like, what do people expect kids to grow up believing when you're being faced with this kind of violence in your educational room, at home on television? As you said, these
Right.
kids are not being supervised. And so you come to your own conclusions about half of the things that you're seeing.
Right. And you're just like, well, that kid on TV is able to do whatever the hell he wants. And also, I look just like him. And that's another thing too. It was just like, I see pictures of myself as a little kid, and I was just like, I don't know what I felt like a little boy. I looked like a little boy, and I looked exactly like every other little boy that you see on every little billboard. What was the leap that you like? Can you talk me through that, parents? And they're like, can't. Well, one of them is dead, so she can't answer for herself. But even my dad was just like, it was a different time, and just shrugs as if like that just is enough of an explanation to be like why I lost 41 years of my identity.
Yeah.
And now I see little kids who get it from day one, and I'm like, that's amazing. And how can I participate in the healing of that through everything that I've just been through?
Yeah.
Because what the boomers do is the boomers go, well, in my day, blah, blah, blah. So if I walked uphill to school and from school in the snow, you should do it too. And I'm like, no, I don't want anybody to go through what I went through.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go through what I went through.
Yeah.
Why would I want anybody else to do it?
That's exactly right. And I think that 100% comes down to education, right? Back in the day, they didn't know any better because no one was teaching them any better. That's just what they knew because that's what they endured. And it's
Right.
that mindset of, oh, well, I did it, so you should. exactly what you said.
It's breaking the cycle, I guess.
Breaking the cycle, 100%.
So I think that one of the things that I love so much about myself and also people who were raised in this gap is that we knew we were not being raised at all.
Yeah.
That we had no one to rely on and we had to figure it out. And we also knew that, like, of course our way was not the right way. It was a way. It wasn't the right way. And I think the difference between us and every generation before us is that, like, I really think that the boomers think they know the right way, but it doesn't feel good. Like, I love the whole millennial rejection of corporate culture because I too believe it is unsustainable. I've had to participate in it because I needed a job. You know what I mean? Like, I've chosen to participate in it because I was told that that was the only way. But now of, like, you know, working from home and people having, you know, different ways of just saying, not accepting the paycheck and setting a different standard of life, I'm like, yes, let's enter that conversation. So more so than any other generation, I feel like because we were handed nothing and be like, figure it out. We're like, oh, like, and because we've had to live in this weird world of, like, we've seen the actual tear in the fabric of when life was just analog and then when life was purely digital. And we've seen the fissures between how those two things sort of, like, we've seen the transition, literally witnessed the transition of culture. So therefore we are able to transition with it. And then those of us who can have also transitioned because we're like, well, we forgot. Yeah. So, you know, it's a very interesting time to be middle-aged during the transition between the Pluto and Capricorn and Pluto and Aquarius, like quite literally leaving the age of Capricorn, which is, I know best. I'm Saturn ruled, but I know everything. And if I go too far in astrology, please, I'm a tarot reader and astrologist. So if you're like, stop talking, I will.
No, go for it. You know, the queers love that shit.
Yeah. Well, it's important. Everybody should. We're all ruled by water. We're all pulled by the moon. Men and all beings that have a water or carbon-based life forms are affected by the moon because the moon literally pulls water and we're 75% of it. We're all affected by a 28-day lunar cycle.
Yep.
We assign it to people who have menstrual cycles, but, like, all of us go through this. It's very interesting to go full circle midlife during a full changeover of Pluto and a whole 200-year generational cycle, because it is the difference between climbing a mountain and being at the mountaintop is the only way to exist and the only way to succeed versus, so that's Pluto and Capricorn, right? Achievement, 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 achievement. It's the tower. It's quite literally the tower.
Yeah.
If you think of the tower card, it's just like building a tower, building the mountaintop. So Pluto and Aquarius is about community. It's about, we only can achieve true greatness through the relationships and the community that we build. Community care, everything being equal, everyone matters. So if you think about the next 200 years of our life, and sure, it's AI and detachment and sort of like that alienness of, you know, in Aquarius, they're a little weird. But it's just because they see things very matter-of-factly. So it's air energy that's detached in a way that's like, we don't need to climb a mountain. We don't need to kill the earth. We don't need to drill a hole in order to be able to build a tower, right? This is just, this is about looking at everything as if it's equal.
Yeah.
Meaning, my life is no more valuable than your life. And also, in the same breath, both of us are going to die and nothing matters. But everything matters. Like,
Yeah.
it's being able to hold an entire plane of existence at once and be like, you know, I need to drink this glass of water because it will fuel me, even though I'm currently sitting on a planet. And the force of us propelling through the universe right now, on a rock whose at its center is molten lava. The only thing keeping me in my chair right now is the sheer force of the movement at which I'm hurling through the galaxy. But I really need this glass of water. Like nothing matters. The smallest details matter.
Yeah.
It's such a weird time.
It is, isn't it? It's like when you break things down to what is matter of fact, you start to realize the things that you do look at that really are so minimal that, I mean, obviously they matter, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like, what's important to you right now so that you can make this life on this hurling rock worth it for you.
Yeah.
And
to be authentically yourself.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things I'm so excited about in terms of your podcast is it's sometimes, especially in our loneliness as a trans person, you know, I have touched suicide. There's been a couple really, really close calls in my life. And especially for us alphabet people, I think that we can get so mired in the expectations of who we're supposed to be or what we're allowed to be. That becomes our glass of water, right? Like, I need to stay alive. I'm a child and I'm being taken care of by people who my existence is inconvenient. And so therefore I need to hide and I need to bury and I need to closet, however you want to call it. And that's true for some of us. But once you get out of that closet, that doesn't need to be your glass of water anymore.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to tell people that even though they're out, right? Even though they're out of their parents' house, they're in a safe place, they're in a place where they can be themselves, they have to go back and get that little one in the closet.
Yeah.
The parts of you that you've told are inconvenient to everybody. And I think that reminding yourself that we are going to die one day, we are hurling on a rock out of space, you can literally just pick up your bags and leave. You can. I know it sounds crazy to do so and steeped in risk, and it is, but you actually can just leave your life.
Yeah.
If the people in your life don't accept you, that is the only reason that you need.
Yeah, exactly. We talk about that all the time. That's why we do this podcast essentially. And I'm sure this is why you get on a lot of them, or, you know, try and be representation for trans people as well. Like you said, you didn't have that representation growing up. And so to have these platforms to create that community, that sense of belonging, we've got you. We're here.
Yeah.
We're that safe space.
I find myself really grappling with a grief. So I'm trans and I'm male identified. I date women, which means I'm not gay.
Yeah.
And it is it's like such a deep sadness. There's such a grief there. And The Band Played On is one of my favorite movies. Paris is Burning is another one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Like every single gay man in my life, I've had so many gay men who have just given me life and breath, and, you know, RuPaul's Drag Race and Legendary and the Ballroom House, which is, you know, of gay men, but also includes trans women and trans men. And I don't want to exclude anybody, but like the gay culture, queer culture raised me.
Yeah.
It's how I learned how to identify myself in codes, even in, you know, horror movies, which are the Frankenstein, Creature of the Black Lagoon. These are all queer allegories for all of us. It's about othering. And I'm like, it's so sad that like a community that I've literally represented on television, I'm the president of OUT, which is our, like I work at Sony Pictures, and I'm like the president of like our gay club as functionally a straight guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So weird to be like, and I've been deeply discriminated against for my sexual orientation my whole life. I was told forever I was not allowed to like girls because it was sick and it was wrong. And I was just like, are you sure it's sick and wrong? Because I look at all these things and I see boys liking girls all the time and it seems fine.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't I don't get it. Yeah, it's the biggest grief of my life to not be considered. And I'm gatekeeping myself in a little ways because it's not like I'm not the T, but still, like, to be kind of like functionally straight, but also culturally gay
Yeah.
is
I feel like not a lot of people talk about that.
no. And I don't know that I need to voice a lot of it. It's not like I'm asking for like, but I think that people forget that like heterosexuality is also a sexual orientation that should be talked about and discussed, because if you did, you would see that like they're all up for discussion.
Yeah.
Masculinity is only spoken about in the negative sense. No one ever talks about healthy masculinity. And you can go like, what is healthy masculinity? And you're like, have you seen a butch lesbian? Looks pretty healthy to me. It's somebody, can sort of operate in a way that's very action oriented while also not needing to degrade femininity in order to be able to take action, which is my definition of healthy masculinity, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it doesn't diminish its opposite. That's any healthy sort of position, right?
Yeah, any healthy position wouldn't degrade the opposite. Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. And also, understanding that there's a mix of both. And oftentimes, no one ever looks at a painting and goes, you know what, that one swash of blue, that's all that's needed. It's usually a mixture of different colors, multiple colors and layers and shadows. And
talking about the fact that essentially you represent a straight white male,
I do.
it's kind of like, I'm trying to like word this right. So it's
Please
like,
fuck up. It's a mess. Fuck up. Let's just talk about it.
like what I'm trying to say is like, we go through life thinking that being gay is wrong. Being gay can be a sin depending on your like religious background. And then you always felt male, like your whole life. You always felt like I am that little boy in the pictures. I am that boy that likes this girl, and I'm being told it's wrong because apparently I'm not a boy. And then it's kind of like getting to this stage of you're living authentically you now. Like society would treat that as now you've gotten to the goal because you're considered straight. It's like, well, the goal is just to live how you want to authentically be.
Yeah.
I kind of like, from what you were saying, it's kind of like society views that as, oh, well, now you're straight. That was the goal. It's like, well, no, that wasn't the goal.
It wasn't the goal. And also now it's not cool.
Yes.
to be straight. No one wants to be a straight white guy. I mean, we suck genuinely.
Running the gay club.
Well, sure. I mean, still, I oftentimes I'm like, look, please don't leave it up. I'm there because I'm good at talking.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm not good at it. I just do it a lot.
No, you're definitely
you're
good at it.
Thank you.
We'll build you up here. We're about that.
Thanks. Please don't build up the straight white guy. Don't give me any more of my platform. Humble. It's one of those things where, as somebody trans, I oftentimes have found myself, even prior to my transition, I would walk into a club that was supposed to be like a lesbian club, and I would walk out with the one girl who was questioning or bisexual, and people would be like, I don't understand. Why can't you just find a nice lesbian? And I was like, I literally try.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I was like, oh, I'm a guy. And so therefore, that's always been the drawback. And so now I'm like, well, there's a reason why they put the B next to the T. And it's because we're two communities that really do operate in a way that shows you that gender identity and sexual orientation are wildly different. And also who you are should not change based on who it is you're sleeping with.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the times as a trans person, I will, there are some most of the trans guys that I know, they identified as lesbians before their transition. And then with their transition, they have now found themselves very attracted to men because their sexual orientation is same gender oriented.
Yes.
And so they're gay now. And I'm like, fucking luckies. Like,
They got to stay in the queer space.
exactly. And they're like, they're out there. It's not like it doesn't come with its problems, right? Grass is always greener, quite literally. But they're like phenomenal. Everybody's slaying. They're slaying. They're
Slaying.
they're just they're living their life, and they're beautiful. I have There's 3 trans men that I'm really good friends with. We have a group chat, and it's called All T, Some G, meaning all trans. And
I love that.
they laugh at me because they're like, "You're so straight." Like, I'm sorry. I know it. I love golf. I love sports. I wear polos, and they're like, "Girl, please." I don't know. I know a few housewives. I know more Taylor Swift songs now than I ever have in my whole life. But that's been a tricky thing too, is that like I won't go to strictly lesbian spaces because I'm just like, I wouldn't want a cis guy there. Why would I go?
Yeah.
You know, like I want to be very respectful of the fact that yes, while I have a lived experience, I am very much still he, him.
Mm-hmm.
And that means a lot to me. That's a community that I love so much. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, if we could just hand the world to lesbians, it would just be better.
Yeah.
It would just-
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, it would just be better. So I made a short film. I made many short films last year, but the first one I did, the big one that I did, was called Last First Kiss. I got fed up with, like, there's a lot of ways in which dating culture really favors heterosexuality. One of the biggest ways it does that is that it puts sexual orientation and gender identity behind a paywall. So if you go on any free version of any of the apps, you can put your gender, but like who you want to see and who you want to date is behind a paywall, which I think is deeply transphobic, homophobic. It's also really racist because like you have to put all of those search criteria up front in the free version. You shouldn't gatekeep that.
Yeah.
Gatekeep location, you know, like gatekeep other things, but offering yourself up to the dating world, you have to be really careful in both regards about who you're showing who. And so I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm a writer. I'm going to create a world where a trans person finds love. So I originally wrote it as a short. It was called Anthony and Nina Forever. That was the
Cute.
about 2 people who go on a date and they think they found the one, and they're trying to pick a song for what's going to be their first kiss, hopefully their last first kiss. And then I joined this acting community and met other trans people, and then I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I have never once seen a lesbian story between a cis woman and a trans woman, ever.
That's very
That's
true.
true.
Neither.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I changed the story. I wrote myself out of it. So Anthony became Tony, Toni. And I was like, this is going to be a love letter to, and it's an 80s movie in the vein of like Pretty in Pink.
Yeah. I love that movie.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I do too. And I took the John Hughes template and applied it to a very small queer world that takes place at the Venus Cassimi bar, which is the queer. There's no queer flags anywhere. You'll never know that it's a gay bar except for the fact that there's a bouncer outside. Her name is July. And when you walk in, the entire world is populated with queer people of all sorts, because that's the world that I want to live in. Is just like, you don't have to ask. If you know, and you just walk into a space and it's just a magical space.
Yeah. You just accept those that you're seeing. You don't have to wonder what they've got in their genes. You can just accept people on face value and go, hey, you're a nice person. I'll respect you.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no trans. No one says the word trans or queer or anything. It's not. None of it is mentioned. Not once. It's completely universal. I might be biased, but I think it works. I think it works to tell a very specific story about a woman who's just really fed up with dating and then finally meets a girl who's like worth it. And am I going to spoil it for you?
No, go for it. Go for it.
So the whole point is that the girl of her dreams, Nina, of Tony's dreams, is only in town for a night.
Yeah.
And so they're only going to get one shot. So the question is like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to kiss a person if you have to let them go? Or do you just continue to wait? And so that's the question.
Always jump, I think.
Yeah.
It depends. There are some people that would say no.
We had someone recently on our podcast, and he has a very famous quote saying, "Feel the fear and do it anyways." And I kind of feel like that fits into going with the theme of the movie.
Yeah. One of my best friends, his name is Grant. He says all the time, he's like, it's better to have loved than lost than have loved at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I believe in that saying so much.
How did you get into writing? Did you always want to be a writer, or did you come to this space and
That Pisces moon, Scorpio sun, Pisces moon. I was little and I used to take like legal pads. It would just be me sitting at my desk writing story after story after story. My family would go to the movies all the time because my mom and dad are both obsessed with movies. So I think we would see a movie, if not every week, every other week. And I would get all these ideas in my head and I would just come home and I would just write all these stories out on my legal pads. One time I wrote a story down. I was like, Dad, I have an idea for a movie. He goes, okay. And he goes, well, write it down. So I wrote it down on a legal pad. I was like, I want you to mail it to a movie studio because I really want you to, I think we should get this made. I was 8 to 9. And I was like, can you do that? Can you look up the movie studio address? And so he did. And I got my legal pad. My name is Kacy Boccumini. I have this idea for a movie. Here's who I think it should star. And I know that you're going to think I'm crazy, but the idea was the movie was going to star Christian Slater and Balthazar Getty. This is right around the time that Young Guns 2 came out.
Okay.
And I was like, I think it should take place in San Francisco, and it should be about a cop or a guy whose brother is like killed and he becomes the cop of a neighborhood in order to just like, see, he's like a down on his luck guy, but he becomes a cop in a neighborhood and basically like teaches him how to be a nice guy and part of the community.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because I was not pulled in any way to law enforcement. I saw something in my head of like Christian Slater, law enforcement. And I was like, that's what the story was. And it was, I can't remember all the details now because about a year and a half later, I was at the movies with my dad and I saw a movie poster with Christian Slater and he had handcuffs and the name of the movie was Cuffs, Kuffs. And I was like, Dad, this is my movie. This is my movie. And I went to the movie. I was like, you have to take me to see this movie. He goes, okay. So, and I didn't have a printer. I didn't know what the WGA copyright guild was.
Yeah.
So I went to the movie and I watched my movie, and it was Christian Slater's older brother is a cop in San Francisco and he gets shot and he becomes the de facto person. And I was like,
oh my God.
I can't believe this. How could they steal my movie? I'm 9. How could they steal my movie?
That's Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's Hollywood, baby. So when did I start writing? I've written my whole life, but that was when I was just like, something inside of me never forgot that.
Well, it's kind of like it sucked for you in a way because you were like, they stole my idea, but then it would have given you this fire that was like, my idea was good enough in the first
for
place
them to steal
that
it.
they made my fucking movie.
Not only did they make it, but like my idea spoke. I knew the casting.
Yeah.
Christian Slater. I think he would speak to them, and I'm like, I can do this. I can do
Amazing. That's so cool.
And to have that dream at such a young age, that's inspiring.
Well, I mean, it was then beaten out of me for forever because it took me a really long time. I've always written screenplays. I've always had story ideas, and like I used to have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of just like things that I would write, and I never thought that I would ever. I never thought I could actually do it. I never thought I could actually do it. And still to this day, like even when I saw Last First Kiss got a premiere at LA Shorts, which means that the first time I ever saw something that I wrote and directed, it was on a screen in downtown Los Angeles. And I was kind of in disbelief. I was just like, I can't believe that I get to do this.
Yeah.
I can't believe that I did it. It took me 43 years to do it, but I did it.
Yeah. I feel like when you're a creative to your core, though, nothing will stop someone who is that.
It's like the fire that never died.
Exactly. It's always with you. It's always burning. And as long as that fire is burning, you can achieve. And it's that thing of ageism, right? We live in this age where everyone's going, if I don't make it by the time I'm this, oh, well, then my life is over. And it's like, that's simply not the truth.
Too late.
I really wanted to touch on the fact that you became representation for people when they saw you on seasons 2 and 3 of The Real L Word. What I really want to know...
He was like the dreaded questions.
I just want to know, how did you come to be on the show? Like, were you walking down the street in LA and this flyer like just fell under your foot and you're like, yeah, we should do this?
It's even weirder.
Really?
Yeah. So at the time I was married, and she really wanted to have kids. And we had a friend, it was a gay couple, and she had offered to be a surrogate for them. They were trying to adopt, and they had just gone through this terrible thing where they had a baby and they were ready to go. And then at the 25th hour, she pulled out and they were devastated.
Yeah.
My ex-wife, his name is Corey, who was also on the show. She went to him and she was like, look, if you really want to have a baby, I would be more than happy to either donate eggs or be a surrogate for you. You just let me know. And because we were close friends, he was just like, thank you, but no thank you. We want to try a different surrogate. But he was so touched by the offer that he just sort of like kept us in his thoughts. Yeah. And this transpired as we were watching season 1, which we were not a part of.
Yeah.
And so, summer goes by and I get an email from this friend and he goes, hey, I saw on Facebook that they're casting for season 2 of that show that you and Corey like. And they're looking for a couple, because we had just gone out to dinner a couple weeks before, and Corey was talking about how she wanted to start the process of like us getting pregnant. And he's like, they're looking for a couple who's trying to conceive, so you should definitely reach out to them. And so I went on this Facebook post. This was 2010.
Yeah.
So I went on this Facebook post and it just said, Kel, it's a couple sentences about who you are and a couple pictures of you and where you are in your journey. And I was like, okay. So without talking to Corey, I was like, hi, my name is Kacy, married to love of my life, Corey. We've been together 5 years, legally married for 2, because we got married in that window when marriage was legal. Gavin Newsom made gay marriage legal, and then the Mormons took it away. The rest of the state took it away. And so we were in this weird limbo period. And I was like, we're looking to get pregnant and we're going to go through, a sperm donor and all this stuff. And here's a couple pictures and thank you so much. Didn't think anything of it. Went home. And Corey was like, what'd you do today? And I was like, Armin told me about this thing and I submitted this, and she read this and she saw the picture. She was like, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And she wrote her own email. She's like, hi, I'm so sorry. My name is Corey. My partner, Kacy, sent pictures and like, those are not good pictures. Ignore those pictures. Here are the pictures. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And hit send. And they called us the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. And they were just like, your pictures are great. Your stories are so cute. Because that's instant drama, right? Ignore what he said, use what I said. Like, easy. And I know that my pronouns were different back then, but I don't refer to myself in any other way.
Well, you're still the same person. You're authentically the person you were meant to be.
Thank you. And if you look at the poster, you're like, my God, what a gorgeous set of lesbians. Who's that guy in the background? Like, it's so obvious, like one of these things and not like the other. But so that's how we got on it. We were just happened to be at the right stage that they were looking for, and we went through so many rounds of interviews. Like, they followed us at lunch with their friends, they took me shopping, and like, because they were like, oh my God, you only shop on the men's side of the clothing store? And I was like, yeah, why? Like,
controversial in 2010.
So controversial. They're like, oh my God, show us your ways. We had a sit down interview with a room full of producers, including Eileen Chaikin, for all of you listening.
From the L Word, yeah.
And, they asked us incredibly piercing questions like, would you be willing to have sex on camera to inseminate? And I was like, we can talk about it. In our heads, it was just like, no one wants to see us have sex on TV. Not when you have incredibly beautiful people. You know what I mean? You have like Whitney and Romy and Lauren and Hyomi and like all these incredibly hot people. And then you had us two. And we were like, look very normal. Not to say that either one of us are ugly, but like...
Yeah.
I was like, don't take away from yourselves. Come on.
No, I'm not. But like, also Corey and I at this point were about at least 7 years older than everybody else. Because I was in my early 30s and everybody else was like in their mid 20s.
Yeah.
Also, we go to corporate jobs every day for work and they do not.
Yeah, there's a big difference there.
Massive difference. So like in the first season, we are being compared to Nicole and Jill, who are, and if you don't know Nikki and Jill from season 1, you should, because they are perfect. They are beautiful. They are smart. They're accomplished. Like Nick is a boss ass bitch who runs an incredible company, and Jill is a writer and a creative and has abs for 100 years. They have impeccable taste, and we're like, we're supposed to follow them? Like, there's no way. There's no way. Like the casting couldn't be more different, but what we lacked in sort of the aesthetic nuance of the rest of the cast, we made up for in relatability and authenticity, which is my brand anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think people are who they are. And it's not to say that, look, everybody on the show, they are that attractive. They are that fun. And like Whitney, you could watch Whitney literally explain this pen and you would be wildly entertained because she's just entertaining. I mean, just naturally entertaining. And yeah, it was just so weird because, again, to be the only guy in that space, it was just like, I know that I'm supposed to be part of this community, but I swear to God, check the tape. Like, there's just no way that I'm supposed to be here. It just is so different.
I think regardless of that, though, it's really important to recognize that other people watching that felt how you felt in that space would see you. Like, and they are seeing you going, this person on TV that I know, that I can relate to right now, knows exactly how I feel. I feel like this person. And so in a time where we really didn't have a lot of queer representation on television, or we weren't able to identify with a lot of TV shows, like I watched that show religiously because
it was kind of the first of its kind,
being
really.
Being a queer kid growing up, you strive for that. I just want to feel seen. I just want reality TV to reflect like who I am. Because, you know, we had heterosexual reality TV shoved down our throats, The Bachelor. So having those kind of shows is like you were representation for probably a very vast majority of people. And I think regardless of the time and regardless of that space, that's so important to take with you.
I'm always humbled by the fact that when we were started the show, they were like, okay, there's this new thing called Instagram. You gotta get it.
Yeah.
And so I got it. And one day I woke up and just like 30,000 followers later, I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
Like, from. And so I thought for sure when Corey and I divorced, they would all go away. And I was really surprised by how many people stayed and were just, because, you know, on the show and like in general, I felt like I even positioned myself to be like, she is this woman who's going through this incredibly sad, tragic thing. And I'm the supportive husband in the background. And like the point of this is it's about her and her story because she is representative of this community and I'm the guy in the background. And what's nice is that like there's been so many people got something from seeing me specifically. And also, I'm very humbled by the fact that people are willing to reach out to me and to tell me what I have meant to them or my storyline. Some people have reached out being like, I'm devastated that you and Corey aren't together anymore. And I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
I know that's not my responsibility, but it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's just like, I get it. Sorry. Like,
Yeah.
but one woman sent me something that was so beautiful. A lot of people showed our segments to their parents and said, do you see, look, I can be gay because do you see how normal these two are? Like, I can have a relationship like this, which somewhat am like, oh God, no.
But that's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It's wonderful. And so this woman wrote me and she was just like, oh, I showed your segments to my mom. And we would, when I first came out, and she would sit and watch the show with me. And she just loved you so much. And I guess there's one interview where Corey kind of had a little bit of a breakdown and she left the interview. And the interview kind of continued for a second. And I asked them to stop the filming so I could go check on her. And the woman said that her mom paused the show and looked at her and was like, you need to find somebody who loves you the way that he loves her.
Yeah.
She always says, you just need to find your Kacy.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was so sweet. And she told me this story about how she went through this massive breakup. She was engaged and the person was cheating on her. And her mom said, I mean, this was like 10 years later, her mom was just like, you know what? That just wasn't your Kacy. Find your Kacy. And I was like...
That's very touching. Very touching.
Very touching.
I was going to ask, because we kind of spoke a bit about it and you've said people have reached out to you and stuff. After appearing on the show, how has that kind of affected your life positively and negatively? And have you faced any like homophobia or transphobia throughout having that platform, I guess? I
thought if people were going to leave, they would leave after Corey and I got divorced. And then when I came out, I was like, well, for sure, this is going to upset a lot of people because The Real L Word is a show for lesbians and for queer women, for queer identified women.
Yeah.
And a lot of queer identified women do not like men, and that's fine. Men have done a lot to earn that dislike, and it's warranted for sure. And there are some comments that kind of slip into the DMs that are just like, not the greatest, you know.
I can imagine.
They're asking about either like my body parts or whether or not I date men or, you know, if I feel bad or if that's the reason why Corey and I like, and just very intrusive things. And I either don't answer. And I will say that like Instagram does this really interesting thing where it weeds out. If I'm not connected with you, like I won't get that message for months. Like I randomly find things that come up in like a hidden folder and it'll be like the sweetest message and I just like will not have gotten it at all. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so bad. This was like 8 months ago. I'm like, this person must think I'm a total dick.
Yeah.
So I worry about that. So how it's affected me positively is there are many people who have told me that my being myself and publicly an alphabet person on TV, it's helped them come out and not feel lonely. Mm-hmm. People would come up to me at Pride with their parent and be like, I came out because I just showed you to my mom and she's fine. And I'm like, great. And I always hug the parents. Parents who love their queer children, I cannot be a bigger advocate for them.
Yeah.
Just, I want you on every parade. I want you to be the model of parenting. Mm-hmm. It's the difference between having a child who's happy and a child who's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might still be breathing, but you're not alive if you're not allowed to be yourself. And it's just more so than anything, I'm just so grateful that like parents can look at me and go, okay, if he's okay, my kid's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that must make you feel so good. Like, even though at times it could be been turbulent, like on the show and things like that, it makes those little things worth it if you're changing someone's life.
I don't know how I do it. I don't know what it is about me that speaks to people, but if it does, great. Mm. I mean, as a writer, I would love to change hearts and minds. That's like my goal. But my goal with my movies is just like, I don't want to change the hearts and minds of our community. We're changed. It's everybody who's not us. Like, that's my focus. Those are the hearts and minds I need to change. Those are the people. So a lot of the times, my biggest fear as a writer and a filmmaker is that, like, people are going to look at me and say, my films aren't queer enough, or they're not gay enough. And I'm like, right, because I am a straight guy. So I'm trying to take what I know, armed with my identity, and I'm going to make movies targeted to straight guys that are going to be so trans because I'm trans.
Yeah.
And they're going to talk about gender and sexual identity in a way that speaks to somebody who is male and is straight. So yes, but is that going to be like Rambo? It's going to be my version of Rambo if I write Rambo. Like a lot of the times the movies that I'm like looking over here because I have a 12-year plan of like what I want to do. It's called 5 for 10. I need to find 5 multimillionaires who will give me $10 million each to make them executive producers. And it's 5 movies about gender. And those movies about gender, you will never know that they are about gender, except for the fact that they have a different take. One of them is called Friends Like These. And it's basically a version of When Harry Met Sally if they had just stayed friends. Because one of the biggest issues facing our world is that men and women can't just be friends. And it's just like, well, that's ruined everything.
Yeah.
Of course, men and women can just be friends and have all the emotional intimacy possible and never have sex. It happens all the time. But we have so many messages over and over and over again that says, if you have like that romantic love is more important than any other love. And I think that's such bullshit.
Yeah. But we're drip fed that from an early age.
From every Disney movie. Also, men are bred to be codependent. It is whatever she wants, whatever we have to be successful so that we can attain a woman. No matter if you're gay or straight or whatever, the message that is driven through in every single movie is that you must be so that you can earn love from a woman. You don't just get it. You got to earn it. You either got to take it by force or you got to earn it through success or money or body or charm or sexual dominance. Like, it is the stake through the heart of every American movie. And it is a deep, deep-seated problem that no one talks about.
Yeah. It's time to change the narrative.
And the best way to do that is through storytelling.
Yeah.
But so that's my fear, is that like I, for some reason, was given the ability to tell stories, and also for some reason was given this wealth of experience of being raised in queer culture, but am now presented in a form that can walk amongst cis straight people. And I know from working in a corporate culture that now that my voice is lower, people pay attention.
Yeah.
It's so fucking frustrating.
Yeah. But feel the fear, do it anyway.
Exactly. And also, if for some reason I get to be a Trojan horse that gets in there, well, then great. Then the point is, and I will get in there and I will change hearts and minds to wade through. This is the age of Aquarius. We don't need to change. They do.
Yeah. You'll write another movie and someone else will steal it again, except this time you're not 9 and you can take it back.
Or I'll just write it. And like, I was this person and now I'm this person. And so I get to steal all of this wealth of experience of existing in this community that I was never really part of, right? But got to witness, and I get to arm this he, him, this white, straight he, him with all of this and be like, wow, look, oh, this is amazing. Isn't this cool that like we can talk about heterosexual, like this is a movie about heterosexuals, but no one has sex. Oh my God. Isn't it cool though? It's a straight movie, but no one has sex.
You are in the perfect position to be the catalyst for change for those other people that need to listen up.
I hope so. Like, I don't need to make movies for a gay audience. I'm not gay. I would rather open the door for people who identify in that community to make movies and just I'll deal with them.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the biggest thing. It's just like, I'm so scared of people thinking that somehow I'm turning my back on something. And I'm like, no, I think that it's my job to go educate my community on the way in which they're broken. And my community is now different than it was before.
Yeah. I think the thing at least that you can take away from that is, from lived experience, you're armed with the knowledge and you can make the change based on knowledge, not just what you think people want. You know what people want because you've been there. So now you can positively make that change and make those steps in that direction.
That's the hope.
We've got nothing if we've not got hope, honestly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, what I love so much about what you're doing is that your entire podcast is just about hope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hope and a light in the dark. And I love that. I think such angels.
Aw,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's a staple of quotes on our podcast that literally every week we say, if we can just change one person's life, if we can just be that one reason that someone keeps waking up on a Wednesday morning to hear our annoying voices, knowing that they aren't
Alone.
isolated or alone, then we have left our positive mark for when we move on to the next life. And I think that's what's always been important to me. When we talked about the black and white ins and outs of life and how it is so unpredictable, we have all these belongings, yet when we die, they'll probably just go in the bin because no one else appreciates the things like we appreciate them. What can we leave that is going to be appreciated?
Yeah.
I know I speak on behalf of both of us.
Yeah.
This podcast is it, because this will still be on streaming services, hopefully, long after we are gone. And hopefully it's a more changed place that they don't even need it anymore, but the mark is there.
Yeah, the position that you just mentioned is right, because we die alone, we live in our heads, we can cut ourselves off from the world, but like, it's that part of us, that hurt part that sends out a vibration that if you're sensitive enough to feel it, if you're a walking angel, you feel it. And you're like, actually, you know what? I can fix that. I feel, and this is going to sound strange on a gay podcast, but like, I can feel and know firsthand now the pain and isolation and loneliness of the straight community. Yeah. I think that they have been very much like me when I was little. They have been fed these stories and these narratives, and they have nowhere to turn, and they do not know what they do not know, and they are not part of this cool pride festival where they're not. And like, definitely if they, if you put race and class and gender norms on top of that sexuality, there's just a massive amount of isolation. And they don't know. They are on the cusp, right, of like not knowing how to get out of this very scary thing. I don't think that that's something that the queer community has enough to deal with. Like, they don't need to do that. But some of us who are part of that community now, through no fault of our own, who find ourselves in Oz, or I guess in Kansas, right? We know that there's Oz, but we're back in Kansas now. How do we fix Kansas so that we don't have to leave a magic curtain? We can bring Oz to Kansas, and all of us can just sort of like, Oz is being well protected and well guarded now by numerous communities operating on multiple functions. Some of us have to go back to Kansas and be like, hey, how's everybody doing?
Yeah.
Let's come out of the black and white and move into Technicolor because it's available to us. We don't need a hurricane or a twister. We just need some therapy. We need some conversation. That's it. We don't need to burn it down. We just need to start saying out loud, heterosexuality is a sexual orientation.
Yeah.
That's one big thing that I see as well, is you bring a pride flag out and a lot of heterosexual people suddenly think that there's a divide. When it's like, no, this flag means that all of us are counted for. It doesn't mean suddenly we're more important than you or segregation. It means we are all together and we're all accounted for. And I think that's the message that needs to be put forward, because we're not trying to isolate people or segregate further. There's no need for that. We've lived through that.
Yeah.
This is the age of bringing people to mutual understanding so we can try and live as harmoniously as possible.
Yes. I think that you're seeing that a lot in communities where you see the gatekeeping of lesbian and gay away from trans people, which happens far less. I mean, look, Caitlyn Jenner is a fucking asshole, right? Caitlyn Jenner hates Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah.
She hates herself. And, hurt people hurt people.
Yep.
Right now, we have seen over time that queer people in general know that other queer people are lost, and we're finding paths to one another very similar. Like your podcast is a perfect example of that. The cis straight community is flailing because they don't know what to do. And the people who are raising their hands to lead are fucking Nazis and ultra extremists, and are holding on to antiquated understandings of community based on religion, which is in its nature colonialist and oppressive and exclusive. So we need real angels to interrupt that. The new angels in America have to be people who can talk about themselves in a way that says your strict identification of sexual orientation and seeing yourself only in relationship to, I know I'm a man because I'm not a woman, right? I know I'm not you because I'm in opposition to everything you stand for, which is how patriarchy and heteronormativity operate, right? Diminishing of the opposites that we talked about at the beginning. It's breaking down that insecurity of the labels of saying, I know I'm me, and that is a man. It's also a person of trans experience. It's also a guy who loves movies. I'm a cat dad.
I saw your cat before. I was like, so cute.
Oh, yes. Usually he joins these podcasts sometimes. But yes, that is Wesley. He's the best. Difficult to know who rescued who.
Yeah, that is the case with animals, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. But it becomes beyond a flag, beyond a category of just the existence of being human means that I know who I am, and I can play and be with people and be in community with people and not have that fundamentally change how I see myself, but also evolve to experience life. And also stop policing pleasure. You know what I mean? Like, we all find different things pleasurable. The difference between heterosexual sex and non-heterosexual sex is like semantics.
Yeah.
And if you go on Pornhub, there are lots of different words flying all over the place that kind of describe everything. So I just think over time, the removal of the lids of religion, of patriarchy, of heteronormativity, the removal of the need to categorize strictly, this is this thing because it's in opposition to this other thing, you're going to see that breakdown. But it really starts with, if you are a man and you look at a woman and see something so different from you and not equal, that slice off every aspect from that perspective.
Yeah.
I think that the more we pull away from these old established identities that were put into place in order to support money, power, structure, property, which is Pluto and Capricorn, you're going to see this is a different way of us relating to one another where, I mean, what if there is no alphabet people? What if we all just go back to being people? And like, we all use our parts for however we put them, and it doesn't matter what we're called or what we wear or how we look. And then when are we going to fight that battle to hold on to, but I'm this letter, and this letter makes me feel like I belong to something. But if I hand over this letter, I belong to everybody.
Yeah, which is so true. And that breaks the divide. It breaks the segregation, which is ultimately the goal.
I think that's the goal, right? The goal isn't that now I'm a straight white guy. The goal is, well, now I'm happy.
Yeah.
And I have my body and I have my joy and I can use it and interact with all sorts of people. Like, that's the goal. But getting to that, I still have to hop over so many hurdles.
Yeah.
I think what's important is you also have a voice, and that voice matters. And now you're in a position, especially with your work and with your creativeness, to be able to make steps towards that goal. And I think that's all we can ask for in ourselves, is that we get to a position where we can make positive change, whatever that looks like for us. But the fact that we can do it. Before we sign off, do you have any advice you would give to somebody who felt the way you felt and who is now like embodied this person you've always wanted to be? What's some advice for someone who might be on that journey?
Okay, I have two pieces of advice. One of the things that really helped me come to the center of myself was I did a mushroom journey. it dropped the structures, the psychological structures that I put in between me and everything else. And it just allowed me to exist in a space of just kind of being liminal, right? Of just like, what are the gooey parts of me? And how can I meet the parts that are tender, meet the parts that are terrifying, meet the parts that are scary, in a place of non-judgment. And for me, mushrooms has been the most effective way of me getting past my own security system. Like, my ego is my security system, right? All my funny jokes and my ability to smile by telling you the saddest story and like all the armor that I built up, that's all ego. And when that drops away and I'm just that tender little boy sitting in his desk writing stories, he has something to say. And that is the person that I continue to live for.
Yeah.
He's in there, she's in there, they're in there, there's in there, and all of us. And whatever, whether it's meditation, or whether it's yoga, or whether it's journaling, or whether it's going for long walks, listening to brown noise to drown out the ego part, find your mushroom and go talk to that little one. They have all the answers. They know how to make you happy. They know how to make you safe. They know where you need to be. They are brilliant because they have survived long enough to get you to where you are right now. Brilliant and geniuses because they've created these stories, they've created these masks, they've created these performances, they've put on this masterpiece of shadow and puppetry to help you exist long enough to come back and find them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Find your find your mushroom. I don't know. That sounds like the most Californian white guy thing ever. And look, if you're a sober person and you struggle with addiction, then meditation. I'm in Al-Anon, right? I love Al-Anon. I come from the family disease of alcoholism. I have found so much recovery in Al-Anon.
Yeah.
And there's a higher power that I have because of that program. Same thing. So substantive or not substantive, there's many different ways, but I would say go to the center of yourself, because the center of yourself has all the answers.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Very powerful
I was
to
gonna say
end on.
powerful.
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this amazing
Yeah, thank
conversation. It's
Such a joy. Was it a conversation? I feel like all I did was talk at you.
No, it was
great.
Look, our listeners want to hear from other people. They're probably sick to
sick
death
of
of
hearing
us. The whole purpose of this podcast is to give other people the voice, to give you a platform to share your story authentically, to be able to go into these deep dives of what we think essence is and what we think soul is and how we get to where we are living authentically. And that's exactly what you gave us.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us.
An amazing, amazing conversation, Kacy. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for asking me, and thank you for doing. I know how much work this is to do. I know how hard it is. I know how much time it takes, and like, it's just everything that you sent me, all of the questions. It was just pure love and accountability in organization. I'm so impressed. So thank you, and all of your listeners. Just know that like these two people are pouring their love and their soul into this, and it's such an easy yes. I was just like, oh my God, yes. I got chills thinking of it. Just such an easy yes. So like, let me reflect back to you. What you're doing is incredible, and you are magical angels, and we're all lucky to have you. And I wish for you an even more massive platform so you can reach more people everywhere.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we want everyone to be able to see the things that you're creating. So in the show notes, we'll put all of the links to your short films and all of your socials and everything. So people can continue to follow your creative journey, which is the next step forward for change to happen. So let us reflect back to you as well how amazing this conversation was, everything that you're doing, even as a straight white man.
Even as that. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
We never forget where we come from and the struggles that we had to go through to get to that space. And that's what's important, and that's the conversation. So
Yeah.
thank you for having it with us, Casey.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Get
Of
some
your day.
sleep.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're about to go have a nap now.
You enjoy the rest of your day.
I will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Well, thank you so much for joining on this really deep dive with Casey. What an awesome episode.
Such an amazing episode. Such an inspiring human.
Yeah, and as you can tell, Casey is just an amazing human being. So go follow him, go watch his stuff. We're putting it in the show notes, and go get some sleep.
Yeah, we need it.
And remember to
Stay gay, motherfuckers.
I'm talking about, you're talking about, we're talking about just gay stuff.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Just Gay Stuff. Make sure to follow us at Just Gay Stuff Podcast on all your socials and write to us with your stories at justgaystuffpodcast@gmail.com.